Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for another episode of Bitcoin Summer, the only podcast out there where it's always summer. And we are moving into fall here. It is October. It is a new quarter. It is a new month, a new season. And what happened on Friday with the price bump, in my opinion, is just a sneak preview as to what we're going to see within the next couple months here. But here we are. Now, in my opinion, we are at the precipice of either validating or rendering the S2F model obsolete. And the S2F model is the stock to flow, and that was put forth by Plan B. And you can find him at 100 trillion USD on Twitter. And it's a great follow for anyone who is new to the game or old to the game. But what he has predicted, and it's based solely on the scarcity model and the supply model, and not the demand side, but just the supply and the inflation rate of Bitcoin. And then you're comparing that to an already proven market like gold. And where we should be at, based on the stock to flow model, by the end of this year, we should be at, the floor should be 100,000 or somewhere around there. It is a model, so you have standard deviation, so it could be up or down from there. But what happens in the next 3 months is make or break for this model. And that's even put directly to task by the man himself, Plan B. And he even says it right here in a tweet. He says, same for S2F, but I like to point out the current delta between the models, and I really look forward to the next couple months. Price must increase greater than 100,000 to make it 100,000 average. So we need to be, the price needs to be an average of $100,000. He's not even setting a floor. He's just saying, now it needs to go past it because it needs to even out that curve of the model. Or S2F is dead. The man himself is saying that this will be invalidated or proven this quarter. And so that makes it very, very exciting. Quarter four needs to pump. And I think there are so many good reasons, and I've gone over them through the last couple episodes. I think there are so many good reasons why it can and should. And today on the episode, I continue my talk with my brother-in-law, Caleb, who's a newcoiner. He's new to Bitcoin, and he's learning. And we're learning right alongside with him. And today we talk about we jump into the difficulty adjustment, which I think is one of the most interesting aspects of Bitcoin mining, and we jump into what the mempool is. We do a deep dive into ETFs and what the ETF approval might mean for the price of Bitcoin, which has to do with why I think we're moving into a great quarter for Bitcoin, and because I think a lot of the action is going to be to the upside because of all the good news that we've just been waiting on all year that has not dropped yet, and potential good news that we don't even know about yet, like another country adopting or things like that. And another thing we talk about, we go into we touch the surface of the petrodollar and fiat currency and what that means, and we're going to do a deeper dive later on that. So please hit subscribe. Please like if you've been liking the content, you've been checking it out. Give me a follow on Twitter and check that out as well. All of my updates are on Twitter and on YouTube. Subscribe there as well. But going back to the stock to flow model, what the model doesn't account for is the demand externalities. And that's going to be the trying factor for quarter four, 2021. And so what are some of the externalities? Well, we could see a black swan event. We could see another liquidity crunch like what just happened with Evergrande. We could see a deeper version of that. or we could even see as deep of a version as COVID-19, the beginning in March of 2020. I don't think we can see a liquidity crunch like that yet. A lot of what's happening behind the scenes with fiat and central banks around the world is they're starting to get scared and they're starting to speak out against Bitcoin. But just last week, the chairman of the Federal Reserve talked about how he has no plans of banning Bitcoin. And so I think what's happening with the United States is they are separating themselves from China because China's banning them. So, we're drawing a line in the sand. It seems like we're building a line in the sand. And what happened a day after he announced that is a huge price pop in Bitcoin October 1st, which to me kind of signified, they are in bed with banks. I mean, they work hand in hand with, it's an extension of the banking system. It is the banking system. And the banks wouldn't have this much liquidity to pump out into the system if it weren't for the Federal Reserve. So they work hand in hand, and it was almost like he sent a signal to the bankers and the hedge funders and deep pocket investors that, hey, now is the time to buy. Q4, you better get in now. We're not going to ban it, so go ahead. It just seemed to me like the timing was crazy. I mean, we find correlations with everything, so take that with a grain of salt. But I found it interesting, though, for sure. So if the stock to flow crumbles and it's invalidated, we'll find out by December or at the end of December. Is that the end of Bitcoin? Absolutely not. And that's not what I'm saying. But it would definitely invalidate probably the most famous price model, Bitcoin model out there. It would invalidate that, and it could lead us into this whole another trajectory of price discovery. And perhaps it would completely decouple from the halving cycle. And, following the halving, so the year following the halving, bull market usually starts, or during that year, and then it extends a little, 18 months after the halving, depending on, how fast blocks are coming through and all that. But not to get too technical, but what happens after the halving is the price usually ramps up, and it's usually a blow-off top. And then we see a price fall, and then we see a very long and painful bear market. So perhaps breaking from the stock to flow model could be a great thing for Bitcoin. I know a lot of people would be disappointed, and we might see an accelerated sort of languishing of the price and a sideways movement of the price, because if people aren't expecting it to go up to 100,000 within months, or they're not expecting it to go to 150 or 200 or 250 within, the next 18 months or the next year, the next 12 months, without that expectation, speculators are going to shy away from jumping in. If they're already on edge, they're going to just not jump in. And so I think of it as it could be a good thing long term. It could very well be a good thing long term. And I think even Plan B would agree with that. I don't want to speak for him, but I don't think he's afraid of his model breaking. I think he wants it to happen because I think he's positioning himself in a position to have another blow off top, or at least to have one more of these big cycles. But towards, as these halvings, as we go down the road with these halvings, it definitely will have a less and less effect. And I talk about that in greater detail on previous episodes, but there's no doubt about it. It'll have less and less of an effect on the price going down the road. So buckle in, because Q4, it may not go all the way up to where we expect it to go. And it could also possibly drop if we're going to see those macro distress signals coming through the market. One thing's for sure, though, it's going to be a show. It's going to be a show. There's one other thing I wanted to mention before we jump into the episode, and I'm not shilling this company, and they're not my sponsor, and I'm not telling you to run out there and set up an account, but I thought this was interesting, and I heard an interview with the CEO of OKCoin, and yes, they dabble with shit coins, and they make a lot of money off of selling scammy coins to people, for sure. And I know a lot of maximalists would shy away from me even mentioning their name, but I thought this was very, very, very interesting and super good for Bitcoin. And I hope other exchanges follow suit. They have just implemented SAT as the standard for Bitcoin. So what that means is, a SAT is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. And the reason why people have been pushing for having a SAT standard is because as the price ramps up, and you hear this criticism all the time from people online and other people who are into other cryptos, is, the price is so high, it's only for rich people. It's only for people who got in early. I missed the boat, blah, blah, blah. It's unit bias. And what people don't understand is SATs are going to be so valuable. And to be able to very inexpensively be a SAT millionaire right now is to me the most exciting part about Bitcoin. People have that bias that because one Bitcoin is $47, $48, $49, $50,000 per one Bitcoin, people think, oh, I missed it. It's never going to go to 100. It's never going to go to 200. But what they're not realizing is what they haven't built into their mental model is, it's only going to be 18 million. It's only around 18, almost 19 million now Bitcoin. But a lot of that's lost. Don't want to get into that right now. But there's only ever going to be 21 million, and that's in like 100 plus years down the road. We're all going to be dead. And you're not building in that scarcity model. Million compared to 8 billion people on Earth is such a small number. And if it actually does become the standard worldwide, there's no ceiling. Fiat debases to zero exponentially, which means there's no ceiling for Bitcoin. And I just, I think it's a great thing that exchanges are now thinking about it, at least. But OKCoin, as far as I know, is the first one to actually have SATs the standard. And there are other sort of exchanges, but it's not these exchanges where people do trading and things like that. Those types of exchanges do not do SATs. They don't denominate in SATs. And I think it's going to be a very important thing going forward to get people on that standard, because when you're buying a cup of coffee, you're not going to say 0.0000125 Bitcoin. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. People don't think that way. So if we're talking about mass adoption, we need to do SATs the standard. And another thing OKCoin is doing is adopting the Lightning Network. Now, this is huge. To me, this is big. I don't think they've rolled it out quite yet. But more Lightning adoption. And exchanges have been so slow. I mean, you can see when, like, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase gets questioned, like, he's dodgy. He does not want to talk about Lightning. He's like, yeah, we've been thinking about it. So, can we talk about something else now? The Winklevoss twins, they have been asked on interviews. They're dodgy about it. They're like, yeah, we've talked about it. And they're very big Bitcoin proponents. Well, OKCoin is doing it now. So I think that's just huge. I mean, and it's going to help their back end too, that company's back end. And when they're going to be more competitive with companies like Coinbase is going to have to adopt. All of these places are going to have to adopt Lightning eventually. And like I said, I'm not promoting OKCoin. I just think it's really great what they're doing. I mean, they're huge proponents of Bitcoin, obviously, but still be buying your sats from, a place like Swan, or my personal preference is Strike. I just love, it's just easy to use. It's just boop, you pop it in, and now they can convert your paycheck into sats, or however, what percentage you want. So I say still go with Strike, but if you are a person who's on Coinbase, definitely delete it. I mean, it's just, they do not promote Bitcoin enough. I mean, if you want to be on an exchange like that, and you're dabbling with other cryptos, I can't tell you what to do. That's to each his own. But if you are doing that, if you are playing around in those markets, I suggest going to OKCoin, because they're obviously Bitcoin people, and you'll be able to even transfer your Bitcoin onto their exchanges at a much cheaper rate because you're doing it over the Lightning Network. So anyways, without any further ado, let's get into the episode with part 2 of my conversation with Caleb, a Newcoiner, about the basics of Bitcoin, and we're going to continue that segment going down the road. But in the meantime, quarter 4, let's get our popcorn ready, keep stacking, and enjoy the ride. I think potentially you were hinting at maybe you weren't. Maybe I was just reading into this, but potentially you were hitting at, where do you think we're going to be going for the next 6 to 12 months?
Yes, actually I was getting at that to some degree, because I'm trying to determine how much is right now, how much is worth investing right now versus is it worth thinking to wait a little longer?
So I would say if you have at least, and you always want to be looking at, especially with Bitcoin, you want to be looking at 4+ years, but I say at least a 1 year, 1 year to 18-month time horizon for this money, for this specific money. And like I said, you should be doing more like 4, but let's just say 18 months. I would say now, maybe one of the last chances, and, famous last words, because Bitcoin will humble you pretty damn quickly. And, we'll spend a whole month below 40 again.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to take all of the on-chain analysis, I don't look at technical analysis because I think that's complete garbage. But if you look at fundamentals, okay, so here's why. Etf announcement. We've been waiting on it all year. That's happening within 18 months. There's probably an 89% chance. That's good odds. And that's going to shoot it.
Let me stop you really quick, Brian.
Yeah.
ETF announcement, 89% chance. I'm lost on you right there.
Have you heard about the ETF potential for Bitcoin?
No.
Okay, so
yes, in one of your podcasts, maybe.
So, I'm glad we talked about this then. So,
see, that's why I need time to prepare, but I got you.
The United States does not have a Bitcoin ETF, contrary to popular belief. So, in my retirement account, my tax-free Roth,
yes,
I have GBTC.
Yes, same here.
And GBTC is not an ETF; that is a trust.
Yes,
and it's trading right around, it's been fluctuating 15-20% below the net asset value.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of value in Bitcoin that per share that you have, it's trading on the open market right now around 15-20% spot right now. And for the longest time, it was trading 20, 30, 40% above NAV, which is why everyone was plowing into GBTC forever. Because you're getting you're paying a lot, but you're getting that premium on it too. Because there was no other way for institutions or people with a Roth IRA to have a tax-free way to get into Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
So that comes with a huge management fee. So on the back end, they take 2% out of their managed assets. So they're selling off 2% of their Bitcoin every year to pay their management fees. So they're making bank no matter what Bitcoin does. They want to keep their assets under management high, but they're making a lot of money off of the people holding Bitcoin in their Roths. So,
okay. So this ETF announcement is basically the announcement that Bitcoin or GBTC would be what?
Well, there are about 15 different, there's probably 20 now, different companies that have filed for an ETF. And Grayscale is the company that runs GBTC.
Yeah.
They filed to convert GBTC into an ETF. And what that would mean immediately for you and I that hold GBTC,
yes,
we would see that NAV automatically go back up to 0% discount.
Okay.
And it would go, and we would instantly, no matter what moves with the price, we would instantly see it move back up 20% just to be back in line with that price. And then we would see the management fee drop because ETFs historically have a much lower management fee. So you're going to see something probably lower than a 1%. So they're going to be selling off a lot less Bitcoin at the end of the year, right? So there's 15 companies in there that threw their hats in the ring. They thought maybe this ETF would start in March area or be approved in March. So the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission,
mm-hmm.
they're in charge of approving this ETF or not. And like I said, a bunch of people thought it was going to happen earlier in the year, which is probably why people were trying to front run that $100,000 run for Bitcoin because of this ETF announcement. And I do believe that once an ETF gets announced, we're going to not only see new all-time highs.
Yeah, it's gonna completely change the price of Bitcoin.
I think within months of an ETF announcement, we'll see 100,000.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you're saying that announcement will be, you said 89%. Is that
within? I think 89% within 18 months. I think 70% within 6 months. And I think 65% within 3 months.
So buy now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because here's what we're doing. And maybe I didn't explain why an ETF is good for the price of Bitcoin. There are some institutions and corporations that they literally have mandates and corporate charters that don't allow them to buy Bitcoin spot and to hold it. There's just to get a non-custody asset onto your balance sheet is a clusterfuck when you're dealing with these large corporations, right? They're managing tens of billions of dollars. What happened? So GBTC was an easy way for them to get in, but it's still not an ETF, which means that, like I said, with the high management fee, there's other things. It gets really complicated, but like a ETF is preferable over a trust, because legally, like I said, it gets complicated, but legally, to simplify everything, and this is not nailing all of it, but if the company that holds the GBTC ETF were to say, "Hey, we got liquidated. We need our Bitcoin out of our ETF holdings," they legally have to turn those over. But with a trust, it's just like it says. You have to trust them to hold it for you, and there's no redemption. You can't redeem that
risk once it becomes an ETF.
So a lot of these institutions are just waiting for that, because they won't have to go out and get a Bitcoin wallet.
So as soon as it becomes an ETF, then you're going to really see banks going after it. Bigger.
Hedge funds. I mean, we're talking trillions of dollars overnight.
Gotcha.
And also, people have just been waiting on the news. So retail will start popping in again. Shitcoiners are going to start selling their shitcoins for Bitcoin. I'm not kidding. I'm not being flippant about it. I mean, you will see a flight immediately from crypto for a while, from other crypto. And I think, and a lot of people in the Bitcoin world hate the ETF thing. And I just disagree. I think Bitcoin doesn't need an ETF, but it's going to be good for the price in the short run.
I think the best thing about it not being an ETF is it gives those of us who have not invested much into it yet more time. So that's really...
Absolutely. There's a barrier to entry.
Right.
And it's not just the price, it's literally a
podcast scares the shit out of me into buying every time. Cause I'm like, oh shit. Oh, we're running out of time. Here they come. Here come the big banks.
Yeah. So that was my point too. So we're waiting on this ETF, that shoe to drop, and we're waiting on large, big time corporations putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And that could either come in the form of an ETF, or they could be doing like Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy is doing, who has literally been buying every single extra Bitcoin off the market right now. Tesla, Square, there's a couple others, but the dominoes are falling in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, and they've been saying this all year, so I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, but a lot of people are saying that third quarter ends in 6 days or 5 days. So we're going to start getting third quarter earnings announcements. And that's when you usually have to disclose if you've made a large Bitcoin purchase. So people have been saying, Apple's going to announce. People have been saying it all year. That's another reason why people were trying to front run this $100,000 price.
Of announcements of businesses having invested in Bitcoin.
Think about if you had a company like, and I don't know if Apple's going to do it because they're so close to the money printers, but say if you had a company like Facebook or one of those big players, like if you had Microsoft put even a % of their balance sheet into Bitcoin, immediately the other corporations are going to be like, oh, wow. Shit.
Yeah, right.
Like, I need to do this now because I've been thinking about it. I've been sitting on my hands.
Yeah, right.
But I haven't done it, and now I need to do it. It's FOMO to the nth degree.
Chain reaction to.
And I would say to a much, not much less, but a lesser degree, another nation state. It is inevitable. There's already a couple that are hinting at it. Tonga, apparently, by the end of the year. Ukraine, apparently. So if we get another nation state announcement, that's another you don't want to not be in right now. And if you think that you don't have enough Bitcoin right now, I would suggest getting more. And that's my really super way overwrought long answer to your very simple question.
Let's move past this because we were onto something. I kind of forgot what it was. Do you remember what it was?
We can cut all that out too, by the way.
Yeah, no, we're gonna do a lot of editing.
No, I think that was good stuff.
That was good. But what were we actually trying to get at? Because I stopped you in the middle of that to ask you about ETFs, because I have such a loose understanding of ETFs, which now I have a better understanding. Absolutely. But I feel like we were onto something else.
What were we talking about? We had where the price is going.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's how we started it. But I think that pretty much covered that as well.
I think we might have. Yeah. So
yeah, we did. Yeah, I brought a lot to the table there. I pretty much covered that one for you guys.
Here's a question for you, like someone who is new. Do you think that, like, do you think these price predictions are fucking crazy? Or do you think like what is your thought on them? Because like I don't know, because when I first heard some price predictions a couple of years ago, I was like, what? But then when it hit 20,000, I was like, wow, like that was a run from like whatever it was around like 3,000 or two, it was something crazy. It was like a 10x run. Mm-hmm. It was like 2,000 to 20 or something like that. Crazy.
Sure. So as a newcomer, I don't look at those at all. I have no idea what the predictions are. I don't look at the predictions. I put in the same amount every day, and then I watch. And I'm a flawed human, so I get antsy and I dump in a bunch of money one day here when I feel like it's right, and then I dump in a bunch more money then, like another day when it feels right, and I don't usually time it out very well, but I don't really look at any of the predictions.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, that's healthy, I think.
You think that's healthy?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I think like a lot of people focus on where the price is going a little too much. I know it's fun to think about. And there are scientific reasons to think that they're going to reach these certain prices that people are predicting. And I can go through those if you want. But I think
that's information. If I'm looking short term, I would be more concerned about, but I'm not. I'm in no way, shape, or form in this for the short term. This is a long-term investment, as stated, as it should be many times. And to see a prediction means nothing to me. All I'm really trying to gain out of this is like not feeling stupid when I like, oh, here I have an extra $1,000 I'm going to throw into this. And I throw it in, and then I watch it drop right after that. And I'm like, well, now I feel like a real fucking moron. And it's like, I could have waited, that's when it's like, and maybe that's why I should be looking at predictions, is so that I time those things better, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and this is true with any market, but none of us can predict where anything is going. And there are ways to tell. Like I remember hearing in I think it was probably mid 2020, and that was the first time when I saw the stock to flow model, and I was like, are you like, we can really get to at least 100,000 in 2021? And I remember being like, yeah, that's a great thing and all, like it's a great meme or whatever, but like, but it does put you in this mental state where you're like, okay, if I'm going to take this long term investment, I at least need to know what it potentially could do. And I think that's when price predictions do come in handy, because you can know how much you want to invest. So let's say from here, I think in the next 5 years, Bitcoin does an easy 10x from here. Easy in 5 years. I think minimum. Now, if you had a certain goal in mind of how much money you want in 5 years, you do the math super quickly and you can be like, I need this many Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's one reason why price predictions and having that in your mind, at least, don't make trades around it. Don't make short-term moves around it. That's a no-no. But I think any good investor knows a price target. Not that they're going to sell at that price target, but they need to know what they're putting at risk, because the reward has to be there. If I wanted to make a 10-year investment on Bitcoin and I only thought it was going up to 60,000, I wouldn't be in it. It's too risky for that return. It's way too risky for that return. But I don't think it's only going to 60. I think it's going to be going to 60 within a month. You know what I mean? So like there are certain things that you can or there are certain benefits that you can take from having a price target in mind. I think that's just my opinion about it, though. And I think it's healthy to not be looking at those or not be looking those up. You know, like I think that's healthy for you to be doing that.
Start looking that up.
What?
I said, so I should start looking that up.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that with my long-term thesis in mind, like you know, everyone's always like, what do you think the price is going to be, you know, by the end of 2021? And I'm like, well, why the end of 2021? Like, why does that matter so much to you? You know, that's such a weird and I think a big reason why people do that is because the previous bull cycles, which come, by the way, after the halving. So are you familiar with that whole concept?
No.
The halving.
You know, one of these things I got a loose understanding of through, I think you may have touched on it in the past, or maybe we had discussed something in the past, but no, my understanding as of right now is minimal to none.
Yeah. I don't know if we have time to go through like the intricate detail. What basically what it is, you know, the miners get a reward for mining a block of Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And that reward gets cut in half every 4 years. It just so happens to be every U.S. election, presidential election year. I don't know if that was coincidental. It seems a little too fishy to me.
The Clintons are behind it.
But I can see you again.
Yeah, I just realized I look like the Crypt Keeper up there.
I couldn't. I was like, damn, I lost you, dude. So when the rewards get cut in half, that means that half of the coins that those miners earned, half of those are available to the open market. So if the miners were to immediately sell those, you know, the issuance of the circulation gets cut in half. So what's happening is becoming more and more scarce by half every 4 years. And so people have mapped this out and have realized that after a certain amount of blocks after the halving you'll see these huge peaks of the Bitcoin price. And it's a direct function of the scarcity. And so that's where price predictions come from. And when people are like, there is no way that Bitcoin can get to 100,000, they're looking at linear scales and not logarithmic. And Bitcoin it's a parabolic adoption for Bitcoin. So you don't use linear scales, you use logarithmic scales. And when you map it out on a logarithmic scale, you're like, oh, this makes complete sense that it can go up to 350,000 within a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all directly due to the slowing of the issuance of the coins per block. And a lot of people have a theory that the effect on the market will be a lot less as the years go on. As each next halving, the effect is going to be a lot less, because you're talking about, you already have a lot more coinage, and you're going from a small number to an even smaller number, but it makes it makes less of a difference as you get to smaller and smaller numbers, right? So right now it's 6.25. I think it's 6.25 Bitcoin per block that miners get. And when we go to 3 point whatever it is, 1.5, it's gonna the effect's not gonna be that great, right? So people think that we're gonna have less of these huge runs, but also it's gonna be nice because it'll be less of huge drops.
Sure.
So that's what people call like the super cycle, or some people call it the last cycle.
Yeah, a little bit. I do have another question for you eventually.
Let's go to it.
Okay, so when you talk about mempool, is that correct?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay, the mempool is, let me I can actually pull it up and share it with you. Okay, so this is actually the mempool running on my node. And this is a nifty little thing, because if you run it on your node, and you want to check a transaction that you made to make sure that it went through, and that's a good reason. A good way to use your node is to check your own transactions. But
oh shit! All right.
So here's the mempool right here, and it's like, this is probably just looks like a bunch of garbage to you. So here's how busy we are right now. Can you see my mouse?
Yep. Yeah.
So when we're at our least busy, this is 111. So the high priority stuff, this is the next block. This is the next block that's being mined right now.
Okay.
That's what's kind of cool, is a complete visualization of the blocks being mined currently. And you can actually go in here, and these are all the blocks that have been mined. And this is the entire history, by the way.
Wow.
My node has all of this information. And that's how we secure the system.
Yeah, right. I love that.
And so you click on one of these, and you actually see who the miner is. This is the miner that won that block.
F2 Pool.
F2 Pool won that one. And you can kind of click through these. Poolin won that one. F2 Pool won that one. F2 Pool wins a lot. BTC.com won a couple today. So they add the fees and then the Bitcoin that you get together, right? So like I said, 6.25 Bitcoin you get just for mining the block. And then they're adding this 0.05 Bitcoin in fees. So this is how much money that miner got. And this happens every 10 minutes. And not money. They don't get that money. They get that Bitcoin.
That's what it's valued at currently, right?
Exactly. And they can decide whether to sell it. And miners are actually holding on to it right now. And so what they're doing to fund their operations right now is borrow fiat, borrow dollars, and hang on to the Bitcoin. So that's another reason why people think the halving cycle creates this huge price influx, because miners have an idea of when they want to sell too.
Yeah.
Right? So they're not going to be selling at 42,000.
Yeah.
They spent all of this money building all of these facilities and all of this equipment, these super expensive miners. And they don't want the bottom of the barrel. They don't want it where it was at the last cycle for sure. So they're definitely not going to be selling at like 20, you know? And so there's, you know, a lot of what happened during the original China mining ban was the price drop. There were a lot of miners that they were forced to sell in China because they had bills to pay in yuan. And it's just a microcosm of the whole system, because once miners, if and when miners are forced to sell, we do see a huge sell-off because they've been hoarding all of these coins. And when they're dipping them onto the market, that's when you get some weakness in the price.
Sure. Well, they're hanging on waiting for it to peak, I assume.
Exactly. But where does it peak? You know, and that's what they have to all ask themselves.
Yeah.
So, do you have any other questions about the mempool? That was a cool.
Oh, that was actually very informative. Well done. I didn't know you could bust out the graphs on me and shit. Perfect.
Oh, another thing I want to mention about this. This is something that I really just started to fully grasp in the last year, and this is really cool. So think of mining just like any sort of mining. Think of it like, gold mining.
Mm-hmm.
So when the gold price goes up, producers want to produce more. So people who are digging gold out of the ground, they want to ramp up because they're getting paid way more per ounce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like people are always like, oh, like people don't understand Bitcoin. They're like, well, when the price runs up on Bitcoin, there's just going to be more miners, and then more miners is going to bring more coins. But like, that's not how Bitcoin works. It's just an ingenious thing. And a huge reason for that genius is the difficulty adjustment. You can see that in this section here. And every 2 weeks, there's a difficulty adjustment. And so when the miners got kicked out of China in May, the hash rate dropped. And the hash rate is basically just the security of the system. That's like how many miners' power is directed towards the Bitcoin network, right? So they're validating all of these transactions. And when the hash rate drops, the level of security of Bitcoin drops with it, and usually the price, because it's much more vulnerable to, they call it a 51% attack. To be in just the simplest terms, it's just a way for somebody to take over the system. And people, have talked about it for years, but there are just a ton of experts in the field that are like, it's just impossible at this point, unless you had like this crazy quantum computing. And even then, like, people are like, nah, it's just not possible. But long story short, this difficulty adjustment happens when the hash rate goes down, the blocks go through much slower. And so transactions are getting verified very, very slow. They're supposed to be around 10 minutes, right? And so when you're taking like 30 minutes on a block, that's really bad for the system.
Mm-hmm.
But the difficulty adjustment every 2 weeks, it brings down the difficulty rate of the mining, which means that they lower. So let's say it's like a random drawing. Let's say it's like Powerball, right?
Okay.
So let's say on a normal difficulty, let's say the miner only has to guess a number between 1 and 500,000, right? Let's just use that for an example. And when they guess that one number between 1 and 500,000, they get that block. Now, when the difficulty adjustment goes down because the hash rate dropped, mm-hmm. and the blocks are coming through slower, so it's all timed. So like they want to get it. So like the protocol wants to get it back onto that 10-minute block time. And in order to do that, drops the difficulty. So then if the difficulty drops, let's say now to guess the block, it's only you only have to guess a number between 1 and 250,000.
Sure. Yep.
And so miners can do it that much quicker because they're only running through a smaller number of probabilities.
Sure. So who determines when they make that change?
The protocol. And that's it's all a part of the protocol.
Shady as hell.
It's the craziest thing in the world. Once, like, I was like, what? And
protocol.
This is why it's amazing, because there's not a person, a dumb human, deciding when we get more hash rate and when and when it needs to be more difficult. Like if blocks are, if they're doing blocks too fast, like it was just happening last week. It was, blocks were coming in way too fast, and then you need a difficulty adjustment upwards, and then that would go, you'd have to guess a number between 1 and 1 million, and then so that's how they adjust these 10-minute block times, because it's a random number generation basically. And so who knows, like, you don't know it, you can never get it exactly 10 minutes every time. But with the difficulty adjustment over a long period of time, it will always be near that 10-minute block time. It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, you just blew my mind, and I've got about 1,000 more questions for you, but we don't have to go into that.
So anyways, that's the, unless you had another question about the mempool, we can move on.
We can move on from that.
You're sick of that already.
Yeah, over there. I got it. I get it. Protocol runs it all. I get it.
Yeah, no. Well, you're just like, now you're thinking about Terminator 2, and you're like, are the computers taking over?
The halving sounds like a horror movie. The protocol is kind of like
some people call it the halvening, which even sounds more like a horror movie.
Yeah, gotcha.
Or like Hobbit talk. Sounds like it's from Lord of the Rings or something.
Yeah, I get it. I mean,
there's a lot of wild stuff going on, which is why you and I could probably have a 3-week conversation about all of this stuff.
This is kind of par for the course every time I talk to you about Bitcoin, but
this is the reason why we wanted to record it, because you end up having 40 more questions than when you started, and I always feel bad because I'm like, well, I just confused them now. So I'm glad that we're doing this now.
For sure. I mean, usually I'm 12 beers deep anyways, so you're really confusing, but it's good. We'll just keep chugging away at what we got here, and I do have more questions coming your way.
Great. Let's do rapid fire. We probably got like 24 minutes left, 25 minutes left. So let's do we don't have to go like, yes or no answers, but let's get a couple out of the way here.
Okay. Let's see. Let me go back to my original thoughts.
Wow, you got a whole notebook full.
I have a notebook full of pure bullshit and nonsense. Let's see. What was one of the other questions I had? Well, just to touch on fiat and what that truly means. Nina actually asked me about this. And
Nina's your wife, for the
wife,
listeners out there.
With great questions, and I try and answer them as if I know the answer. And then that's when I realized that I have to ask you. So the question was basically like, we have a general understanding of fiat, but like if you can break it down even further to like, so my understanding would be it's just like government issued currency.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Nailed it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Cool.
It technically means.
So then I was right.
Yeah. I think it's Latin. It technically means by decree. So we've been on a fiat system, and it's been an experiment since 1972 when we came off the gold standard.
Yes.
Because money and notes, literally a note is a debt that the bank holds, because you can go in and turn your note in, because it's like a bond. You're holding this note, You go in and they give you that amount in gold.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got off of that standard, it like, so fiat literally is by decree. And that just means it's worth this much because it's worth this much. And we can go into crazy detail with that, but let it be known that our fiat system glommed onto, and now, and a lot of people refer to it as the petrodollar, because it is the settlement currency for oil.
Sure.
All the and now Russia and China are trying to get away from it, but all of the world's oil gets settled in dollars.
Yeah.
That's the backup, right? Which is what always keeps the value of the dollar propped up.
Yeah.
And not to get too tinfoil hat guy on you, but a lot of people with good authority think that the reason, we weren't in Iraq for oil.
Yeah, right.
I mean, kind of, but we were in Iraq because England had threatened to not settle their oil purchases in dollars anymore. And there were deals coming out of the Middle East around that time, and they were going to be signing these deals and they were going to start settling in another currency. And the US said, no way. And suffice it to say, a lot of bloodshed has been had because of the fiat dollar system. And the only reason why we have been in basically any war for our entire existence as humans is money printing. Governments cannot afford to go into war, because what that means is you have to raise taxes on the population, which is, no matter what the justification for the war is always a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
So what they do instead is not raise your taxes, and they create an industry around war.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this system pumps up the US dollar. And that's what our fiat system is built on. So not to get too down the road on that, but
no, that's good. That's what I'm looking at. Yeah, okay. So the US dollar itself, I guess, so there is a lot of, like, knowing how much we print off, and like there's a lot of concern there for that. But I do have friends saying that like the US dollar is backed in a way that is still safer to invest in than, say, Bitcoin or a lot of other, like any other shit coin that you like to call it, whatever, And I guess what would be your take on that stance?
I would like to ask them, what exactly do they think the US dollar is backed by?
I don't know. I need you by my side when we get in these arguments.
I mean, if I were to project into their minds, I would say that they're woefully misinformed and would say that the US dollar is backed by our military might, okay, which to a certain degree is partially true. But if is that the system that you want? Because then the people with the power are the people with the guns, which means the people who are closer to the guns and closer to the money printing are the ones that benefit from the system. And so if it were backed by gold still, I would totally agree with them. And I would say that's a step up for sure. Gold is manipulated. I mean, Bitcoin's manipulated too, but at least those things are not producible.
Sure.
The US dollar, you can hit a computer key and produce it. I mean, the Minneapolis Fed chair said last year in 2020, Kashkari is his name. You can look it up. He said there are literally infinite amount of US dollars at our disposal.
Mm-hmm.
At our disposal. An infinite amount. They can print as much as they want, and they will. And so I think when I don't know where people are coming from when they're like the US dollar is backed or Bitcoin needs, I've heard this argument, Bitcoin needs to be backed. By what? I mean, Bitcoin, I mean, it is backed by its protocol.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
It can't be replicated, and neither can gold. But you can't transfer gold to Japan for $0 right now and have it settle without spending money to do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can't at all do it instantly, but you can do it over time with money. You can ship it, and it's going to cost you, and it's going to cost you a large percentage of what your of what the value of that gold is. But with Bitcoin, you can do it instant, especially on the Lightning Network. You can do it for free. So I think.
So essentially, the dollar is not backed, and that's just it's backed by the current infrastructure that we have, which is pretty shaky.
The dollar is backed by the value of oil. And when we lose that, which we are slowly, like I said, Russia, they're already Russia's not settling on the US dollar with oil right now as it is. The world is moving away from the US dollar as the reserve currency. And a lot of Bitcoiners think that Bitcoin can replace it. So imagine if oil was settled in Bitcoin. You can't manipulate the price as hard now of oil.
Sure.
Because it's backed by a hard asset instead of a US dollar asset that we print into the oblivion every single year, especially since 2020 is like a huge ramp up. Yeah, you brought up, having conversations with your friends. I find it harder and harder.
It is challenging
because it's kind of frustrating sometimes because they want to be locked down in their way of thinking. It seems like maybe that's not the case, but that's what it seems like when I talk to my friends. It's like I was even talking, and I did it on my last episode, but I was talking about paying off your mortgage, and you were there when I was talking to Brad about it.
Yes.
I had a friend who was just like, yeah, no. And I'm like, okay, I get that, but why? And he was like, well, because then I don't have to pay my mortgage every month. And I'm like, yeah, but you're paying it off with cheaper dollars. Like,
it's a fixed rate. Nothing's changing about it. The price of the US dollar is going down.
Yeah.
So you're actually paying it off by not paying it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I mean, and he could I'm up for a good argument, but he didn't even want to argue me. He just was like, nope. And he didn't want to take the next step and be like, why is it that way? And I think that happens a lot of times with Bitcoin to a frustrating degree because, I do have friends who that's why I'm glad you said that are like, yeah, but Bitcoin's not backed by anything. And these are people that are keeping tens of thousands of dollars in their checking account at any given time.
Sure.
And just letting it die. And it just makes me feel bad. And maybe I am just way too far down the rabbit hole, but it makes me feel bad because I love them and their time and their energy is being wasted because they don't know what to do with that cash. And they're letting it literally just die in a bank account. And they don't want to listen to me when I was saying, in December and January, hey, just put like 1% of your savings in Bitcoin, or 5 or whatever, just a tiny percent, and just sit on it. They don't want to listen to that. And so I don't talk to a lot of people about it, you know? And the people that I do find that want to hear about it, I talk too much to them about it. So it's not spread out, you know? It's like
there's a little bit of a stigma with Bitcoin too, of sort of lumped into almost like the flat earther conspiracy theory side of things too. So a lot of people that are very level-headed that I feel like should latch on to Bitcoin are, you know, hesitant because they're like, well, that's like, let's not talk crazy talk here. Let's put some money into a Roth IRA, use the fiat. It's a system that works. I'm logical. And I'm like, yes, that's correct. That sounds correct. But if you look at it from another, or if you do the research and you look at it from the other perspective, you can see why.
I don't even, you know, this is what's frustrating for me about it is with a lot of my friends, I don't even necessarily need them or want them to buy Bitcoin if they don't want to. But don't keep $40,000 in your checking account.
Yeah.
You know, assets are doing very well right now, but the dollar is not, decidedly. You know, if you were in the S&P for the last year, that would have been a good move. And, you know, and this is what I was talking about going back to our conversation earlier this year, is if you want it on autopilot and you don't want to think about it, you're going to do very well with dollar cost averaging into the S&P, because you can take all of those dips, and all those dips are actually good for you because you're buying at those lower prices, and then you're gaining all the upside on the way up. And I just have friends that just don't have an investment mind, or you know, they save, but they're still stuck in 1990 when our checking account or our savings account had a 5% interest rate.
Yeah, right.
And it just, you know, 5% would be awesome, but it just doesn't happen. It's 0.1% if you're lucky.
Right.
You know, so I don't know. It's
draw it out or whatever.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's why I think it's good to talk to people like you who are curious, open-minded, but also you're still tied into people who literally just don't get it. They just don't want to get it or don't know. And like I have almost, you know, and I'm ancient compared to you. So like I've just lost all my, you know, high school friends anyway, just through life. But like, you know, you get to this point where you're just like, I just don't have time for people who aren't intellectually curious anymore. And I just feel dumber after like walking away from that conversation, because I'm just like, you weren't like challenging yourself. You're the exact same way than when we were 18. Like it just it drives me absolutely bonkers. I can't express enough.
Well, I'll tell you what, I get in these arguments, and the unfortunate thing is that I am the dumber one, so it's really tough to make that case. And I'm like, where the fuck is Brian? I know I'm right here. Just give me a second. Let me make a phone call.
Well, hopefully I didn't confuse you more during this conversation.
Well, you did, but I think it was a good confusion because, you know, the little that I know is astounding. How little I know. And
that's how early we are, though, too.
Yes. So I don't know how you want to try and use this conversation or any of our conversations in the future, how you want to go about using this.
Oh, this is never happening again.
Okay, perfect. So I hope this short session will be helpful in some way to the viewers.
This is going straight in the trash heap.
All of it, and completely edited out.
No, but what I'd like to explore going forward, I think, is a way to bridge the gap between me being too dumb to
too smart to know how dumb I am.
No. And I'm not being humble. Trust me. Like I'm too dumb to talk to people anymore, because you get to this point where you've studied so much of something that you're just like it's like it's like a computer programmer,
yes,
who has no social skills whatsoever. Like I feel that way sometimes with Bitcoin, because I'm just like, I don't even know how annoying I'm being because I am talking over people, and I want to reel it in, and I want to become a person again. I'm not even making a joke. I honestly need to find a way to talk to people about this, because I'm coming out more and more to our friends and family around us, I'm getting more and more comfortable even talking about it at a wedding now, so to people who I barely know. And before it wasn't that case, and I even wanted to keep like my like stock investments quiet. That's just the way I am. I don't I don't want to be the stock tip guy.
Yeah, sure.
But I do want to have conversations with people, and especially people who still think that fiat is backed by something. I want to have conversations with those people, because it's just woefully uninformed, and it is towing the line of what they want you. They want you to feel disillusioned. The people in power want you to use their CBDC, and they want you to use their digital coin when they roll it out. And that's what's going on in China this week. Do you think all this Bitcoin stuff is about them? It's definitely about them trying to keep power over their people. But do you think it's about just Bitcoin? No, it's about their CBDC. It's them unveiling their new digital coin, the yuan, which is already rolling out. And Bitcoin is a direct competition of that. And they're showing their hand by proving that Bitcoin is powerful enough to threaten their currency. Now, that's a pretty powerful statement. An entire country is trying to ban it, and countries all over pop it up. And then you just see the adoption in that country just explode that week, because people are just like, oh, this thing must be really, really great.
Yeah. Some shady shit.
I think maybe I was all over the place today, but I think maybe next time we can have a specific, because we had a couple different things that we could have like went down that alley, but like it does get prickly because there's so many things.
I have so many fucking questions that I want to cut you off all the time, but then I'm like, don't. He's on something. But then you go over my head, and I'm like, I should have
cut him off. See, yeah. Well, maybe it'll get better next time. Maybe.
I'm like, yeah, totally. I got you. All right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
for growth on these conversations.
Yeah, and this is the first time, and I think like it only can get better, right?
Sure as hell can't get worse.
I don't know about that. I had a really good time myself.
I did too, Brian. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
But I do think that we moving forward, if you want to continue to ever have conversations with me about this and take this route of having an ignoramus ask questions, like more of a structured approach, will give me some time to like research a specific topic and have questions on that specific topic rather than the broad shit. What is Bitcoin?
Those are good too, but those will come up. Those really simple questions will actually come up in the course of conversation of more specific questions. So like you have a specific question about something, and those questions will naturally crop up. So I think going forward, having a narrower path, I think is actually going to benefit the show.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know if you had an idea before I close it out. If you had one, like, and this is what I was trying to get at the beginning too. If you had like one thing about Bitcoin that you are still just like you don't trust, or you don't even come close to understanding, or you just like really just don't like that part of it. That's what I want to hear about. Is there anything off the top of your mind that, or can we like maybe sit on that and talk about it next time?
We can probably sit on that, because like quite honestly, I don't have very many negative. Honestly, all I have are positive associations with it, because what I have is a negative association with government issued money.
Right.
So
a good place to start.
Kind of like this thing that I didn't know very much about, and the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, this is like I guess the biggest aspect to me that is a deterrent is like the almost like too good to be true aspect.
Yeah.
That might sound, but it's like shit like this is always bullshit, right? Like, oh, it's fucking anti-establishment, against the government, like pretty much goes against big banks and giant corporations. It's our way to get back into this. Like, too good to be true, right?
That's an amazing point.
Is it too like, and as we know, like it's not too late. It's whatever. So I guess I don't have any like major overwhelming, this is super negative about Bitcoin. There's just the what is it about it that seems a little too good to be true, and like why is it
right?
There's just all those aspects I don't understand.
I think about it this way. I totally agree with you. Like every other month, I'm like, this is too good to be true, right? It's too easy. You know, you want to go through this suffering for something, right? And it doesn't need to be that difficult. And I know exactly where you're coming from, because I struggle with the same feelings, because I'm like, I'm missing something here. I'm missing something. But the more, it's funny though, because the more research I do and the more deep dive that I do, like that difficulty adjustment thing, like the more research that I do, I'm like, oh my God, like, no, I am not wrong about this. Like I am actually the more research I do, the more bullish I get on Bitcoin. And that's actually like a detriment to me for sure. Like that's why I can't talk to people anymore. It's like, I got to this point where I'm too bullish, and I want to be drawn in a little bit. And you have to be honest about the drawbacks as well. And I try to do that here on the show. And I probably haven't done it enough, but I don't, you don't want to come out swinging, and it's a new show. You don't want to come out swinging and be like, this and this are wrong with it. And quite honestly, it's kind of hard to find things, but like there are weaknesses, and I've touched on a little bit today. But, we do have to question our bias. And I think that's a super good point that you brought up. Before we close out, and I'm going to end it right here, but I want to ask you a question. And maybe I already did just now. So maybe this is the second question. I want to ask you another question.
Comment.
Why you mentioned that you were maybe have a distrust for government issued money, or the government in general, possibly. But why were you convinced about Bitcoin, or what keeps you in it? Like what drew you to it to begin with?
I don't know. It was a long time coming, because I did know a couple people that were into it in the past. And this is like, we're talking a long time ago, like before it ever even made any money ever. And it was like, then I watched people make money off it. And it's like, well, that's going to spark anyone's interest. I think that's what sparks anyone who's interested in Bitcoin at all, watch that all happen. So there's like slowly over time, interest sparks from just different circumstances, knowing different people that have made wealth off of it. And then you start asking more questions, you research a little more. And then honestly, like at the point I am in my life, I was doing very little investment towards my future. And then I just started doing that recently within the past year and a half. And that's when I was like, well, what should I really be investing in? And then by fate or whatever, honestly, talking with you during all that, like that conversation that we were talking about in November, last November during Thanksgiving, and it was like, this guy's so like, I was already interested in Bitcoin. I already had some Bitcoin, and then you're like, honestly, like Bitcoin, I would recommend you buy Bitcoin. I'm like, Brian recommends Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, instantly buying Bitcoin. So I don't know, I'm a bit of a gambler myself.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the rush of just buying shit like that and getting into it. But yeah, I mean, just the overall looking at what to be investing in as someone who feels like they're late into the game.
Yeah.
To invest, it's like, I need to maximize my returns. Like,
yeah.
How can I do that?
Yeah.
And basically, I've looked into so far from my research, it's been Roth IRA, Bitcoin. That's basically, those have been from what I've researched, the most return on my investment from someone who's going to get into it late in the game.
Yeah, I was talking with Allison about this the other night, and Allison's my wife, by the way, for those listeners out there who don't know. I felt like when I got into investing, and I've been investing for a while, and it's probably been like really, really investing probably for a decade. But I felt like I lost all of those years. Like I lost all of my 20s.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, totally.
And I was always looking for this, this one life-changing investment. And Apple was a good investment for me.
I'm going to make up for the past 10 years. Like,
yeah. And I brought this up with Allison, and I was like, for the first time, I feel like I found something that that's going to catch me up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another reason that it scares me.
Too good to be true.
Yes. Yep. And it is a bit of wishful thinking, but I remember being a kid and having a ton of hope and dreams, and you slowly get those sliced away.
Yeah, ripped away slowly but surely.
Yeah, and you don't realize really how heartbreaking it is until you sit back on the end of almost 40 years and you're like, holy shit.
Brian, I'm still in a band.
Well, I was at your age too, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But yeah, you're gonna have to quit that soon. I don't know. No, but stay in it as long as you can. But my point is that it really feels good to have hope again.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I'm being naive or not with Bitcoin, I'm just so happy to have hope again. And I have positioned my investment that it would take a catastrophic failure of Bitcoin for us to be damaged by it, for my family to be damaged by it. I think the worst case scenario in reality that could happen is that we're right back to where we were.
Yeah, right.
That's the position that I put us in. And so I don't worry about Bitcoin as a thing failing necessarily. I'm worried about losing that hope again. And that it's not the financial aspect of it to me, of Bitcoin failing. It is my hope again. And it sounds corny, but it's totally true. Like I don't want to go back there. And I hope that even if Bitcoin plummets and it's just a horrible failure and it sucks, I hope that I can hang on to that and I can use that in my life forever, but I don't think that Bitcoin's failing. And I think the protocol, as we were looking at, is an intricate piece of information. And it's wild how well it works and how every day that it doesn't die is just a miracle, really.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think, where it goes to, like, you need to figure out for you what it means to be smartly invested in Bitcoin for yourself.
Yeah.
So that there's no, like, there is some risk. There's an unknown. Yeah. So you can't just blindly buy in.
But here's my advice as I was trying to skate around your questions earlier on in the show is put yourself in a position to not be hurt, or reduce your hurt as much as possible. And that's taking the risk out. That's what taking or reducing your risk means. Right. Is if it does plummet to these levels, you're not going to be hurting. And that's why the dollar cost averaging makes sense. Putting away money that you're not going to miss. You know, if you're like me, you know, like FOMOing in at 57,000 towards the top, and then you have nothing on the way down. Yeah, that hurt. Mm-hmm. But it was a good lesson for me to hang on to a couple of those bucks for when it does drop. I don't regret it whatsoever. And I also know that money's coming back. Right. You know, but you know, those last couple purchases towards the top hurt. And we all need to get hurt by this first before we come out on the other side. Because what's happening are these large corporations and these large hedge funds that are playing around with the market right now. What they want you to do is sell you your coins for cheap.
Okay.
Don't do it. Don't sell into their hands. You need to you need to go right along with them because they're buying. I mean, these orders are insane. I mean, like 1,000 Bitcoin at a time, 500 Bitcoin at a time, 200. Like it's money that you and I it's unimaginable. Like it's just like, and just like, meh, here you go. Like that's the amount of volume that's getting purchased right here at this level. And you know, I'm not saying FOMO in and go like buck wild and go 110% in right now. But if you have a chunk of change that you don't need for a year, I would say put half of that in. If we see another good drop, put another quarter of that in. And then if we see a really good drop, put the last quarter of that in and sit on it. Mm-hmm. And in a year, you can decide what you want to do with it. I would say hang on, but you can decide what to do with it. You can take some risk off the table, but it's a good way to mitigate some of the risk and take a little bit of chips off the table if you want. But then you're going to be missing out on what I think is going to be a crazy run within the next 5 years, because the next halving is 2024. And so I think, you know, we're going to have another good, and that's when it becomes on an issuance level. That's when it becomes more scarce than gold. And that's the gold. If it matches the gold market cap, we're talking about $500,000 per Bitcoin easy. So I don't think there's any reason to sell it in a year, but if you guys needed the money, you know, then take a little bit of risk off the table and keep some, like whatever you want to do. But I would say get a little bit in right now, because I want you to get ahead of the ETF game, you know, mm-hmm. and I don't think you'll regret it. And yes, you're going to want to send me a bill when the price does drop, and you're going to want to, you know, Venmo, you know, cash at me and be like, hey dude, you owe me. But in my opinion, the sats are worth more than the dollars. So even if the price drops, that's just an artificial market price for it anyway. The number of sats that you bought, it doesn't change. And that's a good lesson that I have learned too, to always price it in dollars. The dollar's broken. So that's my final word on that. Any closing thoughts for you? While I yap your ear off?
Yeah, I'm here to promote my band. That's why you had me on the show today.
Yeah.
Saw us on playing. When is this airing, Brian?
Probably Friday.
Next Friday. We got a show on the 15th at Bayview Backyard. Check us out.
Backyard show.
It's a bar called the Backyard, so it's
gotcha.
A little bit cooler than someone's backyard. Not much. Pretty similar idea. And
okay.
You can pay us in Bitcoin.
Oh, wow. You're taking Bitcoin now.
Sure.
Great. Do you guys have...
No, we're not set up for that yet.
Do you guys have a YouTube page? YouTube channel?
No. This is, you can edit this out. That was a shameless promotion.
Do you have any videos shot?
Nope.
All right. Well. All right. Well,
no, closing thoughts on Bitcoin. No, I have like 1,000 more questions.
Yeah.
So
I have at least 500 more answers.
Cool. All right, sweet. We'll have to get at it another time then.
Okay, so I'm gonna round it out here, and I honestly, it's thank you for carving out time, because I think we have all this discussion about investment and all that stuff, but like at the end of the day, I think what I've found out in the last year for sure, or at least maybe even the last 6 months, it takes me a long time to grow up, but I have much more come to appreciate the value of time. So I want to thank you for taking a couple hours out of your night,
absolutely, and
chatting with me, because I think that I think it's going to benefit a lot of the people that watch the show and listen to the show, and it definitely has benefited me, because like I said, like it's very hard for me to have these conversations, and it slows me down a bit, and it's going to help me even on my episodes that you're not on. It's going to help me communicate better. So thank you.
All of them.
What, you're going to come on all the shows?
I thought that was the idea.
I'm fine with that.
No, we don't want to waste that much time.
No. If you want to come on all the shows, we got to get well, we're going to learn together, but it's
going to slow us down. It's going to slow you down big time.
No, I don't think it would, but we'll discuss it off camera. But
the air, by the way.
But you'll have to come up with some like great beginners tutorials for like a wallet or something. But anyways, we'll discuss that down the road. But that's what I wanted to do, is bridge the gap between newcoiners or no coiners and somebody who just completely can't talk to people anymore, like me. So
I love being a part of it. So thanks for taking your time to allow me to ask my ignorant questions.
I got to get my loved ones on board here. I just I know that you guys work hard, and I want you to hang on to every sat of that hard work that you guys put forth. So thanks for coming on the show, Caleb, and we'll definitely make time to talk again soon, like maybe a weekend or two down the road. So
sounds good, man.
All right, any final words, any other promotion of your band that you'd like to get through?
I think I gave their name out. It's Sawsound.
Gotcha.
Look us up on Spotify. I think we have one song on Spotify. So.
Oh, Spotify. Okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Sawsound playing at the Backyard in Bayview.
Yes.
In Bayview on Saturday?
October 15th, 16th.
Oh, okay. Well, I got the last part wrong, but I got the rest of it right, which was amazing.
We're playing on a Friday, October 15th, everybody.
October 15th. Do we have a time?
At night.
At nighttime. All right, folks, be there. If you're in the Bayview area, I don't even personally know where that is, but we're going to wrap it up there, folks. Thank you for joining me today on Bitcoin Summer.
Peace out.